This is the ghost story of the Denver Firefighters Museum. So the first fire station, first firefighting company in Denver was started in 1866. It had a one of those pumping units, but it kind of suffered from a lack of water back then. It wasn't very useful. This building was one of the early fire houses. It was built in 1909, and when it was built, it was fire engines. They weren't engines; they were still horse-drawn. And then in the 1920s, of course, that became obsolete. They had to remodel it. They had to replace the horse stalls and the hayloft with things like lockers, and they added a cement floor and plumbing, but it was still became very old. And in 1976, it was decommissioned as a fire station, and it became the Denver History Museum in 1980. Well, there are three entities that occupy the Denver Firefighters Museum. One of them is a man whose name is Caleb, who apparently was murdered during the gold rush here in 1859, 1860, and was buried on this ground. And then they built the firehouse over him, apparently without removing his grave, because there's a room in the basement where they keep having to replace the cement. And the reason they keep having to replace the cement is that it gets scratched away, and the shape of the scratches in the floor are perfectly the size of a human grave. Well, the next entity, it's actually two entities, but they're always noticed together. It's a boy and a girl. And people feel these kids standing next to them. There's all kinds of ways that people encounter these kids. Apparently, the story is that these kids had died during a fire. They were on the second floor of a house that caught fire, and they died in the fire, but because of the valiant efforts of the firefighters of this station to save their lives, they followed the firefighters back to the hall. And now the kids have kind of attached themselves to the firemen. So the museum director sometimes will hear kids playing out in the hall. And, they'll have classes come in here. Schools will bring the kids here for a field trip. And she'll hear kids playing in the hall, and she'll go out to look for the teacher whose kids are playing outside her door and annoying her, and discover that, well, there's no classroom in the building anymore. The kids are gone. And people on this tour have seen a kid up in the second floor at night when we do these tours, long after the museum is closed. Now, the third entity I kind of like. His name's Old Tom, and Old Tom used to take care of the horses when they were using horse-drawn fire equipment here. And he loved horses, and he was really upset when the horses were replaced by fire engines. And so Tom is just kind of a rambunctious little guy who likes to screw around with people. One of the things, they used to have one of those, in the old days, you would open a door and there'd be a little bell that would ding so people in the building would know that someone came in. Well, the bell would ring all the time when nobody was coming in. One of the fun things Tom would do is the director's office. She had the director, a woman, she had a bunch of pictures on the wall. And she'd come in the morning, and the pictures would all be on the floor. And this kept happening for a while. And then she went to see a psychic, said something about this. And the psychic told her that it was old, and, suggested it was Old Tom. And that because Old Tom loved horses, she should get a picture of a horse and put that on the wall. So she finds a picture of a horse. She thinks it's a silly idea at first, but she was in a store, a vintage stuff store. She finds an old picture of a horse, puts it on the wall. Next morning she comes in. All the pictures are on the floor except the picture of the horse. Now, there was another woman named Tiffany who was in the cafeteria. She worked in the building. She was in the cafeteria. No one else is in the building. The door to the cafeteria slams shut. There's no wind or anything. No windows open. She opens the door up again. It slams shut again. A little while later, they had to replace the plexiglass. There's a room in the building where they have a display of old firefighters equipment, and there's plexiglass around it. The plexiglass broke. They had to replace it. Well, a psychic came in to the building to check out these weird things that are going on, and the psychic came in with one of those devices they had and said that they got two things on their recorder: good grief and taco. Well, it turns out that when the door slammed shut, Tiffany was eating tacos for lunch. And when she went to the plexiglass and saw what had happened, she said, good grief.